was missing June? Was he thinking back? The picture was snapped.
We're going to get started in about just 1 minute. So if you would take your seats, we'll get this show on the road.
Also, during the presentation, we'd like to mention that the exits are in the back. There are 2 exits, one over there on the left and one here. Also, please put your cell phones on mute or turn them off altogether, because every single time we hear them. Please.
Well, good evening, Westlock and surrounding areas. We welcome you to a Let's Talk Alberta event where the goal tonight is to share ideas, share comments, bring your questions, bring your ideas, and to do it in a safe place and to talk about the things that are important to Albertans. We're so happy that you've taken the time to come out tonight. It's not the best of weather, but we hope that by the time you leave, that you'll feel that your time was well spent and that you'll leave with some little tidbit of some new fact, some answer to a question, and that all around you'll have had a good time being with people who are concerned about the future of Alberta. Max stole my next part, the housekeeping issue. So he already told you where all the washrooms are, the exits. If you want, there are merchandise tables all along to my right here. There's also a sign-up table at the back. And you can leave your name and contact information there so that if there's another event in this area, they will contact you. Also, if you want to get more involved, please go back and sign and tick off where it says volunteer. Now, there is one book at the back. Sheila Gunn Reid had donated quite a few books to Let's Talk Alberta, and we've sold them all, but there is one left at the back. It's $20. So first one who gets there gets the book. Tonight's event will feature 3 powerful speakers speaking about different areas, issues that are important to all of us. And we ask that during the presentation that everyone keep their comments and their questions until the end, where there'll be a short break and we will have a Q&A, and that's where we'll ask you all to come up, bring your comments, your ideas, and your questions. How many of you here tonight have never attended an event like this before? Good number of you. Well, welcome. So before we get started, traditionally, we always begin our meetings with prayer. So if you would join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we welcome your presence here tonight. Father, we're here to talk about freedom. Freedom of conscience, freedom to follow our values. And the good thing is Lord, you are the originator of freedom. That's what you put in every person's heart. And Father, it was a risky thing, because you know we wouldn't always choose wisely or good or justly. But tonight we have the opportunity, and going forward, the opportunity to make choices that will affect us long into the future. We're all here for such a time as this. Help us to choose what is good, what is just, what is wise, and what's best for Alberta. Bless the speakers with the spirit of wisdom and clarity in all that they bring to us tonight. Bless us as listeners so that we could have ears to hear, eyes to see, and a heart that would be able to discern truth. Give us courage and give us the energy to put these truths into action. Father, bless this land and bless the people of Alberta. In Jesus' name. Our first speaker tonight is Sheane Meikle, good friend, and he and his lovely wife Bonnie worked tirelessly for Let's Talk Alberta, and they have worked tirelessly for years, wanting to see the best for Alberta, to see it prosper and be free. Sheane has worked all over the world in the oil industry, and tonight he's here and he's going to bring us a little bit of a history lesson, and I think you will all find it very interesting and fascinating. So without further ado, we welcome Sheane Meikle.
Thank you, Sandy. What I'm going to talk about tonight is a little bit is the historical relationship between Ottawa and what is now known as Alberta, and a little bit about Saskatchewan. In the 1880s to around 1903, 1904, there was a huge American settler movement. There are many, many towns that were formed that carry American ancestry. How many here know the little town of Usona? Okay, I live 6 miles from Usona. Does anybody know what Usona stands for? The United States of North America. How many people here know the town of Rimbey? Oh, almost everybody. Its original name is Kansas Ridge. The city of Airdrie. Its original name is Yankee Valley. Near me, there's a district that's still known as Dakota. And this actually worried Ottawa. The reason it worried Ottawa is because it was a lot easier to absorb a territory than it is to absorb a province. And so that was one of the main reasons why they wanted to make provinces out here in the West. In 1904, Sir Clifford Sifton made the following statement while standing on the steps of the Manitoba legislature. We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our people to the east, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity. Now, why do we care what some guy said over 100 years ago? Well, he was one of the authors of the Alberta Act. And on September 1st, 1905, the Alberta Act and the Saskatchewan Act came into being. Alberta and Saskatchewan are the only two provinces that were brought into confederation by an act of legislation rather than by negotiation. How many here have had the chance to ever read the Alberta Act? Okay, I would encourage everybody to go to the Government of Alberta website and download a copy. It's not very long, and it will be very eye-opening, because if you read it, you will see that we were given the rights of a territory, not the rights of a province. We were given the name of a province, but the rights of a territory. And we have been fighting ever since to get the rights of a province back, or actually issued to us. In 1913, the Railway Act's amendments were issued by Ottawa. Now, what did that do? That meant that all the regional railways could not cross provincial lines. So if you were loading, let's say, grain in Stettler, and you were headed to Thunder Bay with it, you hit the Manitoba or hit the Saskatchewan border, you had to offload everything, load it onto the Saskatchewan carrier, do the same at the Manitoba border, and do the same at the Ontario border. But the funny thing is all of the eastern railways were made exempt. So this put a lot of the local railways out of business over time. And by the early 1940s, almost all of them had been put out of business, and all of their assets were bought up by what we now know as Canadian National Railway. The last hanger-on was Alberta Northern, and they were bought out in the 1960s, but they finally, in the 1970s, they lost their name and they were absorbed into the CN family. In 1930, the National Resources Transfer Agreement was signed between the provinces and Ottawa, which transferred all of the natural resources from the provinces, or from the federal government, to the provinces. But however, several ministers in the government at the time said that they were not expecting Alberta and Saskatchewan to be given the same rights. So we were fighting along that right even at that time. In 1931, on December 11th, the King issued the Statute of Westminster. The House of Lords wrote it and the King signed it. And what that did is that gave sovereignty over the land and resources to the people in care of the provinces. So what does that actually mean? That means there is no federal land in Alberta. If we were to enforce it, the parks and all of that is provincial land, not federal land, under that act. If we would have been able to enforce it, Jasper would never have happened, because our resources could have got in there to fight that fire. In 1935, the Canada Wheat Board was formed. And when it was first formed, it was voluntary marketing board from coast to coast. If you were a farmer, you could join it, and they would help you market. But in 1946, it was made mandatory for Western Canadian farmers. Now, what did that do to us? Well, if you were a farmer in Ontario and you wanted to sell your grain to the United States, you would pull up with your truck to your bin, load up, and drive across the line and sell it to the United States. If you lived and farmed west of the Manitoba border, to do the same thing, you would have to pull up to your bin, load your truck, pull into the elevator, offload it, turn around and buy it back from the wheat board. Then you could sell it to the United States. This stayed in effect until 2012. The reason that it was repealed in 2012 was because Western Canadian farmers had enough. And you actually had 13 of them that were willing to go to jail for it. And they went to jail, both from Alberta and Saskatchewan. They went to jail for a total of between 6 and 12 months each. And they were kept in horrific conditions. They were treated much like the Coots boys were treated. They were kept in isolation, and it took them being willing to stand up for it to finally be repealed in 2012. In 1947, we finally had discovered our vast resources. We had discovered oil before that, but we discovered how much oil we actually had. And what was the first thing that happened? The federal government put federal control of oil pricing and all pipelines under their control. And that stayed in effect until 1950. And that meant that we could not sell without the federal government telling us what we could sell it for. We weren't answerable to the world markets. We were answerable to Ottawa what we could sell it for. How many in here remember the great flag debate of 1965? There's a few. I'm too young to know. But in 1965, our then Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, decided that he wanted to make a distinctively Canadian flag that represented all of Canada. Well, when he introduced the maple leaf into the House of Commons, John Diefenbaker stood up and said, "Why are you using the sugar maple as a symbol for all Canadians? Why are you not using something like the Manitoba maple, which is found from coast to coast, whereas the sugar maple is only found in Eastern Canada?" Well, Pearson did not like that, So he forced closure on the bill and forced it to a vote. Not a single Western Canadian MP voted for the maple leaf. And in 1967, during the Canada's centennial, many towns and cities in Western Canada would not fly the maple leaf. They flew the red ensign, which is our second official flag. Most people do not realize that we have two official flags in this country. And the red ensign is still an official flag of Canada. By the time I started school in the early 70s, I knew nothing about it until I was doing research years later. It was memory hold just within a matter of several years. Some people say it's the famous Russian Canadian hockey game that did it, but I think it was an active campaign to make it so people did not remember it. 1973 to 1974, for a period of about 18 months, we had the oil export taxation policies, and Alberta's oil profits were capped. Now, the simple version of that is you were all told that we had an oil shortage in the 1970s. Well, if you were an oil company, and if you were told that your oil production was 100 barrels, and you were to produce 101, and the profit from that extra barrel was going straight to Ottawa, would you want to produce extra oil? No. And so our then Premier, Peter Lougheed, fought the federal government tooth and nail and finally got it repealed after 18 months. But they weren't done with us, because in 1980, they brought about the National Energy Program. Now that brought everything that was in that program, 73-74 program back, with the addition that now we had to sell to the east at a reduced rate, and they got priority on our oil. Now this stayed in effect until 1988, and I was actually talking the other night in Brooks to a gentleman that actually worked in Brian Mulrooney's office during this, and he said that it was true that the oil price had gone so low that it wasn't profitable. But the other reason is they were going into an election year, and they wanted Alberta's vote. And they used the fact that they wanted to get rid of this, and they sold it as, we're thinking about you, Alberta. And so that's why it was finally repealed. In the 1980s and the 1990s, there were several things that happened. First off, in 1982, we brought home the Constitution to Canada from the UK. Then in 84, you had the first Quebec referendum. And then in 95, you had the second one. Now, we can thank the second one for the fact that we have the ability to have a referendum in this province. Because after the second referendum in 95, the federal government went to the Supreme Court of Canada and said, is it even legal for a province to secede from Confederation? And the Supreme Court came back and said, yes, but these are the rules that you must follow. And that is what they wrote the Clarity Act based upon. So anybody that tells you that if you believe in independence, that you're a traitor, well, the Constitution says otherwise. And so then in 2012, they brought in Bill C-36, the Jobs, Growth, and Prosperity Act, which gave Ottawa control over all of Alberta's projects. So that meant that we could not put a pipeline in, could not build a high-rise, could not build a highway without federal approval. In 2016, the federal carbon pricing was brought in. And we all know what happened with the federal carbon pricing. It killed our oil industry for quite a while before we could rebuild. 2019, Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act, and Bill C-48, the tanker ban, were enacted. And in last fall, Premier Smith signed an MOU with Carney to remove those last four bills. Within 1 week of having signed that MOU, the House of Parliament met and they voted it down. And it wasn't just the Liberals. Every single party voted it down. There were only a few people that voted for it. So that brings us to modern times. Right now, we got 3 bills that should alarm everybody coming out of Ottawa. We got Bill C8, which is still in first reading in the House. We got Bill C9, which is in first reading in the Senate. And we've got Bill C22, which is still in the discussion phase. What do these bills do? Okay, Bill C8 is the Internet censorship law. And what that does is it gives the Minister of Telecommunications the right to sign without any court or anything, and you have no recourse to wipe you off the internet. By his signature, you are literally removed from the internet. That doesn't mean that you just lose your ISP. That means that you lose access to anything on the internet. Online banking, you cannot do. Buying from Amazon, you cannot do. You cannot do anything that you would normally have done online. Bill C9, the anti-hate speech law. First off, there is no definition of hate speech in that bill. It is based upon complaints. So somebody doesn't like that we're having a meeting tonight. They can make the claim that we are hateful, and we can be arrested, and we can lose all of our assets under that as well. Bill C22, the Animal Protection Act. Sounds good, doesn't it? Animal protection, we're all for animal protection. What that does is it gives unheard of rights to the SPCA and peace officers to come onto your property under the guise of suspicion of animal cruelty. They do not need a warrant. They can walk into your house. Before they could come onto your property to inspect, but now they can go into any building. They can go into your house, any place they want to go and inspect it. And under that, if they find something that you shouldn't have, you can be charged with that too. So they are taking away, basically under the guise of animal protection, taking away all property rights that you had. Even though we don't have technical property rights, we still had rights of have probable cause before they could come onto your property. We don't have them anymore under that bill. Now that I've been a ray of sunshine on those last 3 bills, I'm going to turn it over to somebody that actually is quite a cheerful person. I'm going to ask Mr. Ben Crane to come up. Ben is a cartoonist, a comedian, songwriter. He's very, very talented in all those areas. And I'm very proud to be able to call him a friend.
Wow. You see, this is why I love hanging with these guys. I get to learn stuff. Excuse me for a minute. There we go. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for coming. You are a handsome. You should all turn around at the same time. No, that wouldn't work. But you guys are, and we really appreciate anybody who comes out to these things, because we really, at the core of this, we want to open doors where people can actually talk civilly. People that have different opinions. And if you're here with concerns, or you're sitting on the fence, or you just outright think, man, that you guys are absolutely off your rocker, well, you're probably right. because I know these guys. No, we really want to have you here, and we're just so thankful. At these gatherings, and this is funny because I was asked to join this group, and we're talking speakers who are constitutional lawyers and economists and political scientists and guys who have been thrown in the hooskow for what they believe. And me. Like, I usually just stand up and sing. I'm not a speaker. And I sing to people because I don't stutter when I'm singing, because, you know, unless I forget the words, then that's all another large part of the entertainment part. But I have been learning so much, and I'm so grateful for the chance to be learning from these guys. And I'm so grateful that you folks took time out of watching your seeds grow. Boy, they got big old grins on their faces right now, them seeds in the ground. I saw them. And at these gatherings, I have been speaking on the foundational values of faith, family, and freedom, because that was a little tagline that just kind of seemed to attach itself to our movement. And these all respect life. They talk about our attachment to the land. Our grandkids are 6th generation on our family place, and we just absolutely love it. All these are values that I believe that Alberta, by and large, has always stood for. But another basic building block of life, I like to try and find out, and I learned this from my wife, I like to find out kind of what's going on at the root of things. Because oftentimes when you see a problem, that's like the leaf. If you can grab the root and find out what's at the bottom of it, that's a great way to go. And so that's been kind of tickling both of my brain cells. I got one on each side, and every once in a while they snap and they actually connect. And there's a big bang and a lot of smoke, and I have me a thought. And that thought is identity. That's an absolutely at the bottom line. That is a basic building block. We're all designed right from the start to identify with something that's way bigger than us. We join clubs of common interest. We cheer for the Flames. We just naturally look for something to be a part of. It's like a tribe. That's an identity. When I was born, way back in the 1900s, I was given a name of my own, my very own name, Ben. And on top of that, I was given another name, and that was of my family, the Crane clan. So I was given an identity right when I was born. And it's interesting, identity is something you can be given, and it's something you can earn or build yourself, and it's something that can be taken away. And it amazes me when people talk against independence. The attack is actually against our identity. It's not against what we think would be a good idea. We are all of a sudden given, we're told, we're called names. We're this, we're that, we're that. That's an attack of the identity. When we moved to Alberta when I was 2, we escaped from New York State. And we joined a nation that was much larger than our family. And Canada became our new identity. It was a country that was revered and respected worldwide. We had played a major part in freeing all kinds of parts of Europe during the Second War. Then when my wife and kids and I took a little trip down to one of the, Dominica was the name of a little island in the Caribbean for a holiday. We were talking with one of the locals. They asked where we're from, and we told them. They said, "Oh, Canada, we love Canada. You guys, years ago, when we were devastated by a hurricane, you guys came in and you built us hospitals, you built us schools, you rebuilt us. We just love you guys." And we were really respected and revered worldwide. We had an identity. as a nation. But about a half a century back, the leaders of Canada started changing that. They decided that we were now a multicultural country. And that sounds good at first. But what it really means is that we don't have our own identity. It means we are instead a conglomeration of many other identities. So when you immigrate here, you do not become Canadian. You instead retain all your cultural heritage from the place you just came from, both good and bad. So we have pockets of this, we have pockets of that, but nothing Canadian. Fast forward to the last couple decades that we've loved so much, we see mass immigration forced upon the provinces from Ottawa with the intention, according to documents obtained by Juno News, to salt conservative voting areas with liberal votes. Give them everything and they'll vote for you. We'll erase our old identity. And that has been going on in Europe. In many places in Europe, they actually have voiced that out loud. We want to erase the identity. Ottawa has also aligned itself with global governance and our PM's famous New World Order, which ironically, I laugh every time I think of this, it's in direct opposition to his big talk of Canada as a strong sovereign nation. It's one side says something different than the other. And that single world governance ideology states that borders are the cause of human strife. And everybody, you just get rid of them pesky borders and everybody just suddenly gets along just perfect. It's utopia, woohoo! But I suggest the opposite. Borders, or being human, is the cause of the problem with human strife. It just happens. And borders actually protect us from one group of people invading and obliterating a neighboring people who hold differing opinions. And borders also help protect our identity and helps us to respect the other guy's identity. It works. Ottawa has also signaled its intention to sever ties with the U.S. Well, that was when I wrote this a week ago. Things have sounded like they're changing again. But that's our largest trading partner and closest ally, and with whom we share the longest unsecured border in the world, in favor of a cozy relationship and an alignment with communist China. It has openly adopted woke ideologies and the climate change catastrophe agendas. The list goes on and on, guys. It's against the identity that we started with. They have intentionally changed our identity. They made it very clear that this is a direction that they are hurtling towards, full throttle, full intention. Now, the part that has me scratching my head, and I still have a little bit of hair up here, is the opposition that we're hearing to the thought of independence by conservative voters, family, friends, neighbors. It appears to me, though, that we actually want the same thing. Now, I have to say this, my wife coined this phrase by accident. People talk about the Forever Canada Coalition, and she called it the Forever Ottawa. And I think that's probably a lot more accurate. But we want the same thing, those guys and us. We want to be proud of our country. We both want to honor the vets who have fought and died for our values and our identity. We both want to have a safe place to live and to raise our children the way we want to raise them. We both want the freedom to be ourselves and to thrive and to work without being controlled and censored. We want to be free to hold and to voice our own opinion, just like we're doing tonight, and to practice our own faith. We both want our vote to actually count. We want fiscally responsible small government with moral integrity, that pesky little thing that gets in the way of stuff. We share so many common goals. I honestly believe that. Even though we disagree on how to achieve them, that's okay. We have to realize that unity is not sameness. You see, there's a lot of redefining of terms been going around All of a sudden, unity means sameness. All of a sudden, consultation means consent. You let that sink in just a little bit if you have more than 2 brain cells. Unity is making the intentional decision to work together towards the same goal, in spite of and even embracing our differences. That's what we want to do. So my question to you, neighbor, is what kind of country do you want? Do you really want the direction that Ottawa has been taking away from our identity for a good half a century, and specifically the last decade? Or do you want to retain the culture and core values and beliefs and identity that Alberta was founded upon more than a century ago? That's pretty cool. That's what I'm fighting for my family, my kids, my grandkids, my neighbors, and for you, is to fight to retain that identity. For the very first time in the history of our province, we can actually have a vote, a say on where we want to go, how we want to be governed, how we want a country to look. The referendum will afford us the privilege of having a direct say in how we want to be governed from here out. So we need a new border to protect our identity. We need to respect another culture without feeling that it's being forced upon us. We can be friends with Canada and be an independent Alberta all at the same time. I think that's a beautiful thing, because then we just heard about the history of kind of what's been thrown at us, and a lot of it is stuck. But we need duck feathers so that stuff don't stick. We want to be able to respect Eastern Canada's culture and people as different from us, without Western Canada being forced to conform. That's my big beef, is I want to be able to be myself and to carry on the way that it's been working for generations and generations. So let's build a country that honors faith and family and freedom. And the only way to accomplish this, I have looked at this for a long time, and I'm not near as smart as the rest of the guys that are up here. That's why I'm hanging with them, because I'm learning. But the only way to accomplish this that I can see is to separate from Canada, because that way we can become respectful business partners and friends and still maintain who we are. They changed our identity. We haven't. The only way to predict your future, folks, is to write it. So let's grab us a pen and take back our identity. Well, thank you so much. When Sheane asked me to, he's our boss, you see, we have to do what he says. When he asked me to, I could use that as a pillow, to join this, I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he says, just be you. And that's the only guy I know how to be. And I thought that was all right. But he says, you're a songwriter, you can write a song. I thought, well, that's easy for you to say. But I got home and I couldn't get that thought out of my head. So I wrote a song. And then 2 weeks later, another one wobbled right out of this hole. That's where the songs come out of. And these are things that have been going on in my brain for a long time. And it's kind of cool to be able to put them out. I hope this means something to you. My Alberta roots run deep. Go back 100 years, steeped in deep tradition, blood, sweat, and tears. Value of hard work common sense and hope and truth, family and freedom, and the value of our youth. What makes me want to hold on to what I know is right. In the face of opposition, stand my ground and fight. My Alberta run deep in my blood, in my bones, it gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move in, tear it all away, I just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Watching life come and go, working hard and playing hard, through sunshine and through snow. We don't really ask for much, 'cause we know that God provides and has given us all the things we need to enjoy this life and thrive. So what makes us want to hold on to what we know is right? In the face of opposition, stand our ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep in our blood, in our bones, it gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move it, tear it all away. Draw a line there in the sand, stand the ground and sing. Our Alberta roots, you can't hide, they define us. But it ain't us. Life's so good, you just don't throw it away. Our Alberta roots run deep. You can't dig them up, pull them out, they grow deeper every day. When somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, draw a line there in the sand, stand the ground and say, our Alberta roots run deep. Run deep. Thank you so much, and I appreciate that. The tracks you're hearing, I own a little recording studio, and so that's me playing that kind of stuff. It's just I couldn't play all them instruments at the same time, so I brought me and myself. I must be schizophrenic. But here's the dance floor is officially open. This is a fun one, and this was based on the history that I'm learning about our province. Sheane covered a lot of it, so it'll be just right fresh in your brain. This one is called Big Dreams. To be brought here back in 1905. We was just fine, spending our time to mind our own business and thrive. But the East had different ideas. We was too good a deal to pass up. They saw what we had and they wanted it bad, so they signed us up there on the spot. They said, we'll call you Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. I know you do the work, we'll take the pay. That makes us the ultimate team. We realized that we was the peasant, and this arrangement just couldn't go far. They said, you feed the cow, we may allow you to take a small sip from the jar. Things just got worse as the times moved. Feds kept us stomping on our necks. Take all our pay, keep our assets at bay. The whole thing would become a big wreck. Say goodbye to old Alberta. So much for all of our dreams. Told what to think. Election day stinks. They've taken out all of our meat. We've had it, we're rattled. We're just gonna move on and take back what's ours. Ride a new horse and we chart a new course. Thank God that we're free. Raise a glass to old Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. Be who we should be, get rid of the liberal scheme. So let's break the chains and breathe free again. Thank God that we're finally free. I'm too old for that. Thank you guys so much. Are you up to say something? Or are you just looking purty? Oh. This is Benita. She's an amazing gal, but she's not going to be speaking. Or are you? Oh, okay. Sounds good. Well, listen, I really appreciate that. We are going to bring up our last speaker for the night. This gentleman needs no introduction, really. We talked about people who have skin in the game. This man stood up for what he believed, and he shut his business down. They shut his income down and sent him to the Hooskow. He's got skin in the game. But I'm so glad that he did that, because I would not have got to know him if he hadn't. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome, please, the Right Reverend Chris Scott.
Okay. Says the green one. This looks like the green one. Well, good late afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to see so many people out on what is today, a Monday night? Is it Monday? It's only Monday? We have another 4 of these to do this week? Wow. We're going to be really, really busy. The reason we're going to be really busy with Let's Talk Alberta is because we believe, as an organization and as individuals, that the most important thing we need to be doing right now with each other as Albertans is talking about things. Because we have some very, very important questions coming up. We have some very important topics that need to be discussed. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed that in the last, decade and a half, there's more effort spent on canceling the other side of the conversation than there is conversing about it, right? And we see that all the time. That's why we're in this hall. We had a venue booked in Westlock, and the venue canceled because we want to have conversations about Alberta's future. This is the time we live in. We live in a time where, people are so, dare I say, uneducated and ignorant as to what's behind their emotional response to a subject, that they're more willing to cancel the opposing view than talk about it. And that's why we're here. You know, I understand that, you know, not everyone in this room will agree with me on everything. I certainly hope you don't agree with me on everything. If we all agree on everything, then at one point we're all going to be wrong about something, and it's going to be pretty messy. But we don't have to all agree about everything. I really hope that there's people here tonight that are opposed to my personal view, which is Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. That is my personal view. Let's Talk Alberta as an organization does not advocate for one side or the other. As you've seen, our speakers all have very prominent personal views, and that comes out in what we're discussing with you. But the idea here is when we're done sharing with you our opinions, our expressions, that we get your feedback and we hear your challenges, we hear your questions, your oppositions. This is critically important. I really hope that there's some people in this room that are going to say, hey, Chris, you know, I value your opinion that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable, but I disagree with you. And here's why. And then we'll talk it out. That's the way this is supposed to go. And the other part of it is there's a lot of things about civics and history and Alberta and Canada and Confederation that we don't know or we didn't know. We were never taught. Most of the things that I know about the things that I speak about, I've only learned in the last few years. I was 44 years old when or 43 years old when I discovered that Alberta never negotiated our way into Confederation. I was 43 years old when I found out that a parliament somewhere else legislated us into existence and gave us the rules and the position we have within Confederation. And that absolutely blows my mind. I had no idea. So many of these little things that we just don't know. And we need to start knowing them and understanding them, because the decisions we're going to make and the questions we're going to be asked depend on our knowledge of the subject to make the right decision. And that's another reason why I hope that people who disagree with my personal opinions come to these town halls. Because if I'm wrong about something, I need to know. Because I already have an idea what my answer is going to be when I'm asked. And I don't want to make the wrong answer either. I don't want to make the wrong choice. So if someone has a point they need to make to me that convinces me or changes my mind, I need to hear that. Because I want to make the right choice. I need to make the right choice. And the reason for that is I understand and I recognize the value of the choice that we're about to be given. I recognize the sacrifices that went into clearing the path so that people like us could participate in such a thing as this. A question posed by, the government to ask us what we want, even if that question results in the secession of a province. That's a very heavy question. And the way it's answered is absolutely critical. It's going to shape our lives, our children's lives, and our grandchildren's lives for decades to come, no matter what the outcome is. I hear from time to time, often from people who oppose my personal views, that people fought for this country and they died for this country. How dare I express an opinion that says that the country isn't working? And I respond with, I'm grateful and I thank those people for their service. Not to the country, but to freedom. To the freedom that we enjoy today, where we can go up on a stage and we can share our opinions, even if those opinions are so strong that they might actually reshape a nation. That is the blessing that we have as Canadians, as Albertans. And that opportunity is not something to be taken lightly. Is there anyone in this room is any history buffs? Well, there's a few. It's kind of a nerdy thing, but history is awesome. If you dig into history and you even take a couple hours and just go and learn about what specific countries had to do to gain their independence. Learn what people had to endure sometimes wars that lasted hundreds of years, to be given the opportunity that we're going to be given, kind of, watered down a little bit, in October. This is a blessing unlike just about anywhere else in the world has ever seen. And it's bestowed upon us here in Alberta. So we need to have these conversations. And we will. Let's Talk Alberta will be going from, my goodness. Sheane said we should call it the Let's See Alberta Tour. Because I've seen more of Alberta in the last 3 months, good grief, 5 months? Really? Is it June? Oh my goodness, it's my mother's birthday right away. I've seen more of Alberta in the last 6 months than I have in the rest of my life, and I worked 20 years in the oil patch in Alberta. I thought I was everywhere. I hadn't really been everywhere because now I'm seeing new places. But we're going to all of these little towns, big cities, whatever. And we want to have these conversations. We want to listen to the concerns people have about the upcoming questions that we might be asked. We want to be challenged on our personal opinions. We want to engage in some dialogue in these town halls where we can hash these things out so that we have the best chance in October of making the best decision for our collective futures. That's how this is supposed to work. It's not supposed to be, I don't like that you want to talk about something, so I'm going to cancel your venue booking. Okay, I'll book another venue. That happened to us at Edmonton. You're too political. You're too controversial. We're not going to allow you to use our publicly funded public space. Instead, we're just going to cancel you. Whatever. We'll go do it in the park. That was our first hot dog roast. We just set up some barbecues and some chairs and had some conversation with people that care about their future of Alberta and their future. And that's what we're going to continue to do. It's very obvious what my opinion is. I'm actually wearing a beautiful Free Alberta hoodie that can be purchased from the lovely Jessica over there, along with some more of our terribly overpriced but nicely blue merchandise. Please see her after. And, looking at me, you might say, well, I know exactly what Free Alberta means, but do you? What is it that I want Alberta to be free of? Is that it? Do you know what I want Alberta to be free of? I want Alberta to be free of legislation and policy made by somebody else, imposed on us, that we can't change and we suffer the consequence for, not them. That's what I want Alberta to be free of. I'll tell you another secret. I never actually wanted Alberta to leave Canada. Do you know what I wanted? I wanted Alberta to be sovereign. I want a sovereign Alberta. I want Alberta sovereignty, where we chart our own course forward. Our laws, our legislation is made by us. We're not interfered with. The federal government doesn't do boneheaded things that kneecap our economy and hurt our people. That's what I want. My personal opinion is that that's unachievable within this structure, and that's another conversation. But when you see my sweatshirt says Free Alberta, it might not mean what you think, but I certainly care. And I care enough that I'll have these conversations with anybody at any time. Not any time, I'm pretty busy. And not anyone, because sometimes people are just too emotional. I don't want to deal with the emotional part. That's actually the most difficult part of this conversation. This is a very emotional conversation. It is for me too, believe it or not. I have a Canadian flag tattooed on my back. I love this country. Canada Day was my favorite day of the year, up until I was called a racist for waving a Canadian flag. And the emotional part of this, if we could separate the emotion from the conversation, this would be so easy. Because the facts speak very plainly. From the history that Sheane mentioned, to the values Ben talks about, to the issues with the structure that I might talk about in the Q&A period, the facts speak very plainly that the situation Alberta is in right now isn't really working. The experiment of this confederation isn't actually working for Western Canada, let alone just Alberta. The facts are easy. The emotions is a tough one. And I've come to realize, for better or for worse, patriotism is actually it's a way to put blinders on people so they don't consider the failings of the nation in making the decisions going forward. And instead they rely on emotional things and emotional triggers to make their decisions. But we all know what happens when we let our heart guide us instead of using our brain. This thing deceives us all the time, doesn't it? Our emotions get in the way of important decisions, don't they? We're going to have to set that aside, because I can't think of a more critical time for Alberta, for Albertans, than this coming October. Whatever way we choose, whatever direction we go, is going to have lasting consequence. And so I suggest very strongly that we start having these conversations. And for you folks that are here tonight, if you have, objections or concerns or whatever, critique or criticisms, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to talk to you about it. And we're going to continue doing this right until October. And then you know what? We're probably going to continue after that, because I've realized, unfortunately, that this whole idea of being involved in civics, being involved in politics and political process and democracy, it's not just a part-time gig. This is literally the rest of our lives. We have to be involved in these things. We have to talk Alberta before we make the decisions so that we can have the best outcomes. And if we can remember that and continue to be involved regardless of what happens in October, there is always going to be room and always going to be a need for things like Let's Talk Alberta, where we get in rooms and talk about these things. If you don't do that in a democracy, you're going to be absolutely lost. If you're confused, you will lose. And we want to try and help with that. And we want you to help us as well. That's all I have. One more thing, though. Benita has been kind enough to put together some clipboards. So for the Q&A, we've found that sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to stand up and say, hey, we disagree with you because of this. We're going to pass these clipboards around, and just if there's anything on your mind, write it down, a question, whatever. We'll go through all of them. And then in the Q&A, we'll take live questions from you folks. We'll take some from the people watching online. We'll review the questions that are on these clipboards, and we want to make sure that everybody's concerns are addressed tonight. If we don't get to your concerns, or we don't get to your question, and this is specifically for the folks watching online, please visit letstalkalberta.com. Letstalkalberta.com, we actually built this cool chatbot, and the chatbot looks at all of my blog writing. It looks at some things from the Government of Canada, the Constitution, all sorts of things. And if you ask it a question like, hey, is Alberta independence constitutional? You ask that chatbot that question, it will answer. And it's AI, so of course you have to take it with a grain of salt, and you have to check what it's saying. But it is there as a resource for you to answer any questions you want about anything that doesn't get answered tonight. So thank you very much. We're going to take a... No, we're not going to do a break this time. I'm going to invite Benita up. Benita wanted to say a few things, and then we're going to get into the Q&A. So thank you very much, and let's talk, Alberta.
So you can tell that Chris is on a mission with Let's Talk Alberta, and I suspect the majority of you are familiar with Chris Scott before tonight. So Let's Talk Alberta is his latest initiative, but let's have a round of applause for the things he did before that. A round of applause for Chris Scott. Chris Scott is one of the reasons I do what I do. And I'm so happy to support the Let's Talk Alberta initiative, not just here today in Pibroch, but as it continues in the coming months. Now, what I've noticed about initiatives like this, because I've been involved with these initiatives, is the costs involved, the promotion, the website, the chatbot he's developing, the advertisements in newspapers, posters, renting halls, etc., paying some of the expenses of the presenters. And so there's 2 volunteers at the back holding yellow boxes. I'd like you gentlemen to come to the front, if you don't mind. And what we're going to do is they're going to start from the front and work their way backwards. And if it's on your heart to give and donate, thank you. Please support the Let's Talk Alberta mission. So we'll get those buckets going around. Whatever's on your heart to give. Chris and the team are on a mission. And it's not just Chris and Shane and Ben. There's more. Some of the presenters on this mission include Tanya Clemens. Sometimes we hear from Corey Morgan. I hear they're also working on getting Keith Wilson to speak at future events. And so you're not just supporting these three gentlemen moving around the province, but you're supporting others. So whatever's on your heart to give. And as I understand it, this is not limited to town halls. The mission goes beyond that. And it's not just a website with a chat bot for people to gain more information. I hear that Chris has been pushing for people to get involved in parades with Alberta flags, show that Alberta spirit. He's doing flyers now and doing flyer distribution campaigns. If enough fundraising dollars can come in, those flyers can not just get handed out, they can get mailed out. And so do support the mission of Let's Talk Alberta. The website is letstalkalberta.com. If you like, you can pick up one of the flyers on the way out. Now, something else to take note of is we have a special fun photo booth at the back, and we'd love for you at some point to get your photo taken on your device, and there are props on the back table. There's a wooden Alberta crest that's been painted. Get your photo taken. Perhaps you want to stop at a merch table first. One note about the merch tables, there are items of merchandise here that you cannot find anywhere else. Tonight is the only night you'll be able to pick it up. So take advantage of that opportunity, visit each and every merch table, and support those merchandisers. Now, if and when you're ready for the fun photo booth, we've got some special signs for you. And the question I ask of you is this before you go there. What's your vision for the future of Alberta? What's your vision? Is it freedom? Is it lower taxes? What's important to you? And chances are there's a sign back there that resonates with you. You hold that sign, you get your photo taken. Something that's important to me is freedom of expression. And one of the reasons this is important to me is, like Chris said, I had an important message to share, and I distributed some flyers in Westlock, and I shared that message. One of the phrases on the flyer was transgenderism can cause infertility. That's one of the phrases that was on the flyer, and it was in opposition to the Rainbow Crosswalk. I have been accused of incitement of hatred by the Alberta Human Rights. Someone reported me to the Alberta Human Rights Commission, and it's now at the tribunal. I have a trial in September. And so when I think of the future of Alberta that I want to see, I'd like to see truly freedom of expression. How many of you would support that? Now, what's the future you want to see? One of the supporters I was chatting with tonight, she emphasized to me that what's important to her is a better future for her grandchildren, because she sees what the Canadian federal government has been doing. It's not just this past year, it's the decades. A better future for my grandchildren. That's the vision that she has for the future of Alberta. So make sure at some point you get your picture taken today. Now, also on the break, there's another item for you to pick up, and it's a flyer that's at the front table, and they're available there. And these flyers are promoting a special thing on Friday, June 5th. Now, some of you may have heard that there's a certain red and white bus coming to town Friday, June 5th, handing out red and white signs. And I know some of us are tempted to be at times adversarial with the folks that currently support that movement. My thought is we win by winning them over. Those folks who currently support that movement could very well come over and support this movement eventually once enough of their questions are answered and their concerns are addressed. And so the invitation for Friday is let's greet them and smile by waving our Alberta flags from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Friday in Westlock, and that red and white vehicle is going to come in and they're going to drive by, and no matter how they behave, we're going to smile and wave. And we might even have signs like this that read freedom of expression, a better future for my grandchildren, freedom. And that same initiative is also going to happen in Athabasca on Friday afternoon. So We'll take a 5 to 10 minute break now. You've got, and then we're going to get to the Q&A. So you've got a bit of time, visit those merch tables, visit that fun photo booth, and then come right back, settle in for the Q&A. Those who want to write down questions, put it on the clipboards, get those clipboards to me. And then also, just so you're aware, there's water available at the back. And thank you again for your donations. We'll reconvene shortly.
So thank you very much for tuning in. We're about to go to the intermission mode, and no, I'm not muted. We're going to intermission mode, and we'll see you right there.
Okay, folks, we're gonna get going here while the The other two speakers are on their way up here. I've got a huge, huge favor to ask of you. The algorithms are playing havoc with our advertising. When we put something out, quite often people are saying that they don't get it on social media until 4 or 5 days after the event has occurred. So I need you to play the shampoo game with me. How many people remember the Clairol shampoos from the 1970s and 80s? Yes. So I need you to go to Let's Talk Alberta's website, letstalkalberta.com, to the Whistle Stop Cafe, to freedomcalendar.net, to the Let's Talk Alberta Facebook page. Any of those sources, find the posters for upcoming events and share them out to people in that area and ask them to share them out. So if you tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends and so on and so on and so on. Benita has done a really good job of pushing this event out, but this is not the norm lately. They really are clamping down on our online ads. So if you could do that, that would be greatly appreciated. And if Chris would get up here, we could get going. Nah, I don't want to. Brad, would you do the mic? Perfect.
I think we're just going to line the for the Q&A. Okay.
We'll take a written and then we'll take a live.
Hi.
One of the questions is, what would Alberta's border look like and how would the borders be protected?
I always answer these questions with a question right off the bat. Does that sound a little loud? Am I real loud out there? So the question is, how do we protect our borders now? Does anybody remember when President Trump was elected again a couple years ago and he started talking about border security and demanding that the Canadian government do some work to properly secure the border? Who secured the border? Alberta. Who secures the rest of Canada's borders? We don't actually know, right? The issue with border security I have as an Albertan is if I don't believe that our borders are being effectively defended, there is nothing I can do about it. I cannot use my voice democratically to elect an MP who will go to Ottawa and advocate on my behalf and then have the change made. I can't do it. That's the first thing. The idea of an independent and sovereign Alberta isn't necessarily about exactly what the border will look like. Like, are the border guards going to have green uniforms? Or are they going to be blue? Are they going to wear hats? Or are they going to wear, you know what I mean? It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the first time in Alberta's history to actually decide how those things are done. So that means with the opportunity also comes some responsibility. That means Albertans need to be involved and talk about these things and decide how they want it done. And then we do it. There was a second part of that question. What would the borders look like? So, yeah, so they'd be protected how we want them protected. We would collectively decide as Albertans, perhaps through constitutional convention right at the beginning. But what they would look like, I actually don't know. This all comes down to negotiations with the federal government. And I don't have a crystal ball. I can't say how they would go and what it would end up looking like. But I can say that anybody negotiating in good faith for Alberta going forward would probably argue that the borders shouldn't change shape at all. But again, that's just my opinion.
Thanks very much. So my question comes in sort of I can get answers. My question is in a couple parts here, but the primary facet of it is that one of the things that was mentioned by you folks as you were giving your presentation was other cultures coming in here and basically maintaining their own communities. I guess I'd like to ask how that's any different from the the Dutch folks at Neerlandia who did that well before the changes you were talking about in the last 50 years. I'd ask the same with Ukrainians around Mundare. And I would ask how maintaining culture works with a culture that with the history of residential school systems and what that did to the culture that was here before. Thanks very much.
Well, first of all, I'd have to ask you, what's your knowledge of the history of residential schools?
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Robert Trueblood. If you went through DAP school, you know my grandmother. I know quite a bit about the history of residential schools. I know about all that went down there. I know the graveyards that were found. I know the practices that prevented people from speaking their own language and customs. And I know, yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of controversy around this right now. This is all stemming from the 215 hoax in Kamloops, which is a hoax. And to this date, like you say, the graveyards that have been found, yes, there are graveyards at residential schools. Yes, people died. I do not believe it was genocidal maniacs. And yeah, I'll just continue. I don't believe it was genocidal maniacs. So the whole premise, I see where this is coming from. It's an idea that there was a culture of genocide that was inflicted on a people of Canada. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
That is part of the question, yes.
Okay. So when I talk about, and I rarely talk about different cultures coming to Canada because I like other cultures, but what I have a problem with is anti-Western cultures coming in that want to change Western culture from the inside to make it mirror what they left. That's the issue that I have. And I have never said that people shouldn't be allowed their own unique cultural identities and communities. Absolutely, that's fantastic. They should do that. However, there is a reason why the West is free and exists the way it does today, and it's because we have developed this society based on Judeo-Christian values under the supremacy of God. All men are created equal, and then we can all be free. So I have a very large problem with people coming in from other places that do not share those values, specifically the values that say that we're all free and we should all be allowed to exist peacefully together. That's the problem. So please don't confuse anytime we're talking about culture as saying we don't want any culture or any immigration. I just believe that if you're going to maintain a society, the people that are coming into your society and contribute must share the same core values as you do. Otherwise, you will not have that society for very long. And I would actually like to spend some time chatting with you after. So if that's okay.
There are some people here interested in knowing what is happening with the chiefs and their court proceedings. Do you have an update on that at all yet?
So I don't have any updates per se, but I can tell you that it appears that Justice Leonard has basically halted the petition process, the petition signatures from being verified and communicated from Elections Alberta to the Alberta government, which effectively quashed the Stay Free Alberta petition, which means that that petition will not be used to compel the government to table that referendum question. Now, the government's response to that, identifying that there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000 plus maybe Forever Canadian petition signatories and 301,000 Stay Free Alberta signatories. The idea is that Alberta has an appetite for this question to be asked in one way or another. So what they've done, instead of asking in October a constitutionally binding question that has some teeth and would result in negotiations on Alberta's position with the Confederation, the Alberta government is going to table a question in two parts. The first part is, do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? That's option A. Option B is something to the effect of, do you agree that the government of Alberta should begin the legal process required to table a referendum on Alberta sovereignty? A binding referendum on Alberta sovereignty. Those are the two options. So the Chiefs were successful in stopping the Stay Free Alberta petition, but they weren't successful in stifling the will of the people, which is what a referendum is. And I also do want to point out that in a recent poll done by Main Street Polling, which is a big, well-respected pollster, you can look it up if you want, in their polling, they suggest that 46% of First Nations people polled want a change, want an independent Alberta. That's a very interesting metric because what we see in the news we see the figureheads of the different First Nations, and they're very adamant that all First Nations want things to remain the same. And that really puzzled me when I heard it, because throughout the last, and this is actually pathetic that I have to say this, it's only in the last few years that I've started to look into the conditions and the statistics that our First Nations brothers and sisters live under in Canada. And it's absolutely heinous and pathetic and disgusting, and nobody should be advocating for that status quo. So when I started looking into this, I started wondering, well, why is it that certain individuals would want the status quo and others wouldn't? And then it occurred to me, well, there are some individuals, and this is First Nations, non-First Nations, whatever, some individuals in Alberta and in Canada who have benefited greatly from the status quo. They've done very, very well. I mean, Jason Kenney has been rewarded richly. He's a member of the Privy Council of Canada, all sorts of things. You know, these people get appointed to Senate positions. The chiefs live in great big houses. They drive brand new cars and have expense accounts, manage millions of dollars. The people, on the other hand, they don't have those things. And the status quo hasn't been kind to them. It hasn't treated them very well. And now, so then when you see this polling, and the polling suggests that up to 46% of First Nations people want a change, want Alberta independence, it's very clear to me why. And one of the reasons, and this is the one that just about brought me to my knees when I heard it, is that in Canada, in some of the worst reserves in Canada, First Nations men live an average of 19 years less than non-First Nations men. And that anybody, I don't care what side of this conversation you're on, anybody who hears that alone should advocate for some sort of a change. So I say no to the status quo, yes to change, and changing in a way that we're working towards change together instead of one group benefiting while the other group lives under those type of statistics.
I'll make a statement. The sovereign country of Alberta will save Canada. On Wednesday, Canada signed a 20-year contract to supply liquefied natural gas to Germany, which will go through the Panama Canal. A sovereign Alberta could negotiate with a country-to-country Canada to acquire or at least exchange the contract with Quebec, who has enough natural gas to supply Germany for 30 years, replacing all of the Russian gas. I'm talking about negotiations. What we've missed in our negotiations here in Alberta is if there was a leadership review in July, August, September, the issues would be the Alberta pension plan, the policing, the collecting of federal and provincial taxes, immigration, and the choosing of judges. And if those were the issues, you would get Canada-wide coverage, if not world coverage, because we're the third largest reserves of oil and gas in the world. And we could help Quebec out by the technology we have, which is the safest environmental principles for recovering gas and oil. We could go down there and help them do it.
Thank you. What happens to taxes? That's what a lot of people are very curious about. There's some theories that it'll be lower taxes, but what's your vision for what will happen to taxes?
You can maybe do it all. No, I'll answer. Oh, okay, so taxes. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can tell you, here's what I know. Alberta has a net loss of roughly $30 billion to Ottawa. That is, we send out, or pardon me, we don't send out. Ottawa collects on our behalf federal and provincial taxes and GST and some other things, excise tax or whatever. That money goes to Ottawa. Ottawa gives us part of that money back. What they give back is roughly $30 billion less than what they take from us. So right off the bat, there's a $30 billion difference. And these numbers are publicly accessible. You can look it up, fact check me if you want. So when it comes to taxes, with that number alone, it seems to me, a humble burger flipper with just a high school diploma, that we probably could pay less taxes, or at the very least the same taxes while taking up some slack for federal services. However, you have to remember that the federal services that we receive right now, we pay for them anyway. Those things are those services aren't like compassionate entitlements that the federal government gives us. It comes out of what we send. So there's estimates. The Alberta Prosperity Project has a document on their website called The Value of Freedom. It's a pretty well done document. There's a couple different, like a high, medium, and low case for this. But they suggest that our taxes could be cut like easily in half. And I'm not saying that that would be the case, because again, this is an opportunity. If you don't like the way that you're taxed right now when it comes to federal excise taxes and GST, federal income tax, what can you do about it? Nothing. That's the point. If we were charting our own course forward and making the laws that we suffer the consequences of, we could influence those things. So if we work together and we held government feet to the fire, I don't see why we couldn't pay a very, very lowered amount of tax than we do now.
And I'm letting Chris answer, because then I can just sit up here and snooze.
Oh, you're holding, okay, great, thanks, awesome. Hi, sorry guys, I'm not a public speaker, so bear with me here. You do really well, Chris, for somebody who's not a public speaker. All right, so notes first. You covered a lot of really great Alberta history. I noticed there was a big period missing, kind of like 1930s to late 70s, which is also the longest running provincial party that we had elected during the time, which was the Social Credit Party, not the social credits that they're trying to usher in with this like WEF mandate or whatever, but it was a period of prosperity for Alberta, and I think that it's a really interesting analog because you know, they just came out of the Great Depression. We might be heading into one right now, and I think that history doesn't repeat, but it does often rhyme, and I think that the success of that party and what they did can be mirrored by the movement here. I think that like the strong focus on Christianity is a huge part of that. A great deal of their success was because they had Sunday Bible groups that people were talking and spreading the information that way. The other part of that is that they embraced the new media, which I mean, back then it was the radio, but now it's you know, we have other things going on. Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just going to ramble for a bit. And so the other 18 seconds, okay. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Chris, was that you're worried about having sovereignty and not having people dictate rules from elsewhere. I think then the conversation needs to be about currency reform. I don't think that independence is going to solve anything so long as we have our currency controlled by a foreign nation or by central bankers who live, you know, in a different continent. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's, I 100% agree. And again, currency, opportunity. This is an opportunity for us, right? My opinion, again, as a grade 12 diploma holder, is that I want Alberta to have a currency that's like respected and admired on the world stage. How do you do that? You build a reserve equal to or greater than your GDP, and then you launch a dollar based, like backed with hard assets. That's what Alberta could do. Right now, we suffer with a debt-backed dollar. Canada doesn't have reserves. The Canadian dollar is based on the overall Canadian economy, and we've watched it slip, losing something. It's over 30 or 40% of its value in the last 20 years. Like a huge number. So I've heard as high as 50, but I think it might be a little bit lower than that. And this whole time, there's been nothing we could do about it. Albertans and Western Canadians, we watched as the federal government printed double the money supply. And we screamed from the rooftops, don't do it. You're going to have massive inflation. We're going to suffer the consequences. No, 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 it'll balance itself. And here we are, a few years later, paying like $2 a liter for diesel fuel, $9 a gallon for milk. Like I just watched the NDP do an entire press release about the inflationary cost of feminine hygiene products. Right? So we have some very serious problems. And this is an opportunity for Alberta to be the realistic slap in the face for the rest of Canada and, dare I say, stop the bleeding? I can't help it.
Now, as for you're talking about the history with the Social Credit Party, I do actually mention first off in the 1930s the transfer and then I go into the 40s where we're talking about what they did for our oil and like the reason that I got talked to about mentioning the crow rate, where we had to pay double the freight, and the East got it all subsidized. I could talk for literally 6 or 7 hours. So I pick out some of for each decade, basically, I pick out some of the highlights. If I went into it and there's people that keep telling me you got to write a book, I could literally go for hours. What I talked on was just the highlights.
And let me touch real quick on the Christianity bit. It's no secret that I'm a Christian, and I hear a lot of times people will say, if you try and base a country on Christian values, you're just shoving religion down people's throats. And I suggest the opposite. Anybody that shoves anything down somebody's throats is totally against Christianity. That ain't how God works. But the cool thing is, if you're not a believer, and you don't have to be, I mean, this is not about that. The cool thing about you don't have to be a believer and a Jesus follower to appreciate truth or respect or honesty or all that stuff. You don't have, the cool thing about that is you can be a card-carrying atheist and you still get the fringe benefits. And this stuff works because it works. And so that was, I appreciate you mentioning that, but I wanted you to know that this is not a Christian organization. We're not pushing anything. We're just saying, let's be honest and let's carry on some integrity.
Before you go on, Chris just showed me an online statement that the kind of have to address. The statement was that without federal transfer payments, Alberta's deficit would become enormous. That's absolute hogwash, sorry, but it is. Alberta is a net contributor to the transfer payments, not a net receiver. Alberta, per population, it gives more than anybody else. And for that statement, I just had to debunk that, because without it, we would actually be very much stronger, because we wouldn't have to send that additional $30 billion a year that we do not get back from the federal government.
I just want to chime in. Ben said that Let's Talk Alberta isn't a Christian organization, and that's true. But I just want to offer this, folks. Many of us have spent our lifetime looking for politicians who offer us salvation and perfection, and we never find it. We never find what we're looking for. If anybody actually wants to know where you find that, any of us would be happy to have that conversation with you.
Assuming it's a yes vote for commencing the process, and assuming that independence is achieved in a subsequent referendum, what happens to the disability pension plan and the seniors' pensions?
So my opinion, again, because like I say, I don't have a crystal ball, and this is about an opportunity, not necessarily what everything's going to look like. What I would advocate personally is that Alberta, no matter what, in the beginning, would take up any slack that's the federal government leaves. So if there's any entitlement, say it's a federal disability amount or old age security or something like that, Alberta would have to absorb that. No questions asked. I would never believe that Albertans would even dream of leaving anyone behind. So that's how that would start. However, my friend Keith Wilson and his group, what's the Transition Council? The Transition Council, they're actually working on these things like, hey, what are we going to do about this particular program? How are we going to move this from the federal government administering it and helping Albertans with it to the nation of Alberta administering it? So all of those things are being worked on by people that are way, way smarter than me, so that if Albertans do choose in the future to chart their own course forward as a sovereign nation, These things are being considered. And this isn't the first time. I mean, this isn't the first time a region has decided to become sovereign from their parent nation. That's happened before. As a matter of fact, I think since 1993, it's 38 times. 38 new nations have done this. So it's not rocket science. Quebec has been contemplating these things for 60 years. For 60 years. They have an entire library. They have an entire ministry of sovereignty in Quebec. Don't quote me on that. It's called something like that. But they have books lining the walls with white papers on all of the things that Quebec would need to do if they were at their own nation. And would you believe it, Quebec actually sent a representative, Mr. Plamondon, and he met with some of my friends in Calgary, and he left them a copy of that Quebec Bible, the Secessionist Bible. So yes, there are things that would have to change, and no, it's not it's not a monumental hurdle that can't be overcome, and there are people that are working on that in the event Alberta becomes independent.
And real quick, to reiterate on top of that, this again is our choice, our chance to actually step in, and because they want to trot this out to us, and they want to take polls and opinions and questions and concerns, just much like we're doing tonight. And this again is where you and I have a chance to do this. So when they do that, don't stay home and complain about the guy that you just voted in 4 years ago. It's like Chris said, we've got to get off our butts and get active. That doesn't mean we have to quit our day jobs, and none of us have. But when it's something's this important, you take the time to do it and get involved.
I apologize for my voice before I start. This is being made political, and I've realized over the last while it's not. This has nothing to do with conservative or liberal. It's about the levels of government and the crown and the people and who actually decides what happens. The important questions that I see are on the federal land confiscation, a question about whether or not we want a government that's socialist or communist versus republic, and the question about taxation with representation or taxation without. To me, I've been in British Columbia, and I've recently moved back, and these are core issues that I see that are not even being talked about.
If there are people in Alberta that want communism, there's a Communist Party of Alberta. Did you know that? I would say the fastest and easiest way to the communism that folks want, should that be what you want, is just don't do anything. You'll get it eventually. The second fastest way is, build an independent Alberta where you get to enshrine that in the Constitution, participate in the Constitutional Convention, and advocate for a communist government. Those are two really good options for anyone that wants communism. And you're right, this isn't a right or a left thing, because there's liberals in Alberta that are upset that their liberal voices don't matter on the federal stage. I mean, how must that feel to those voters? Everyone else is celebrating in Canada, and they're like, oh, you didn't even open our boxes yet. You don't know how we voted, and you elected the government. So, that doesn't feel very good. But there was something that you mentioned at the beginning there, and I wanted to speak on it, and I totally forgot. What was that first thing you mentioned?
Well, it's about levels of government.
Yes.
And
yes.
the crown choosing our path forward rather than the people.
Okay. At the very core, you peel this onion back right to that little piece that's not even round anymore, and it's shaped like a teardrop. This is about the people reshaping and renegotiating their relationship with those who wish to govern them. There's a principle that says you are sovereign. You're not. You don't have rights and freedoms because a government gives them to you. You have them because, as a human being, you're born with these rights and freedoms. You're created in the image of God, and those rights are bestowed upon you by Him. Whether or not you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. That's the principle that we're talking about. You are a sovereign being with inherent rights. So if somebody wants to govern you, there's only two ways they can do that. And in the Western world, we only do one of them. The first way is through force. They forcibly subjugate you and make you subservient to them. We don't do that. Well, we kind of do with debt, but that's another story. The second way is you consent to being governed in a certain way. So when the United States fought for their independence and won, they got to a point, they had the opportunity where they got to decide. They got to write founding documents that outlined what the relationship was going to be between the people and those who wish to govern the people. And they put protections in there. They put freedom of speech as paramount because you need to be able to speak. We have to talk, Alberta, about these things. If you stop speaking, you lose, for sure. They put in the ability for the people to defend themselves. The Second Amendment, whether you like it or not, it's not there because people want to go sport shooting. It's there because the people realized that they wanted and needed to be able to protect themselves from government that got too big and tyrannical. That's also why they have the right to a well-regulated militia, specifically to prevent or to protect from government tyranny. So they shaped the relationship. And Alberta has never done that. Canada has never done that. Did you know that? Canadians did not write our Constitution. Did you know that? I didn't know that till I was 40 years old. Our Constitution was written in England with John A. Macdonald and Georges-Etienne Cartier and a few others who went to England. They sat with Crown's representatives and they drafted a piece of legislation that was passed in British Parliament and then imposed on the Canadian and the people of Canada. Did you know that? Canadians have never, ever told those who wish to govern the way they consent to being governed. And this is the most important opportunity we have to finally, for the first time in Canadian history, be able to do that. It's going to be Alberta that does it. That's why I'm so excited about this. That's why I hardly ever talk about the reduction we could see in taxes, because it could go the other way. People could completely go back to sleep and the tyrants could enslave us through high taxes if we don't participate. The opportunity is that we finally get to do this for the first time. So you're right. It is about our relationship between us and the governments. And we have an opportunity here that people literally fight and die for.
There's another upset that has taken place over the decades too, is the upside down inversion of what, remember we used to call people who work for the government civil servants? The government was originally designed, this again goes back to identity, it's switched upside down. It was originally designed to serve us, but then again, we are the government, we are the people. And so now it has become a place where now we are serving the government. Because again, we've done nothing. We sat there and let it flip upside down. And this is our chance to take it back.
Here's another question that's been submitted. Given the province's willingness to cut healthcare, education, and infrastructure spending, why should a government in Edmonton be any more representative than the government in Ottawa?
Did you say cut education?
It said the province's willingness to cut healthcare, education, and infrastructure spending.
Well, I don't know that any of those things have happened. I mean, the government's just committed like $1.5 billion. No. Yeah. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So in real dollars, yes, they've increased. As a per capita versus inflation, no, they're proportionally lower than they were.
Okay, and why is that?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I'd point to the fact that the provincial government has been routinely cutting taxes for the last 40 years.
Our Alberta, we don't have many babies. We have 1.2 babies per couple. We have declining population. The Alberta government requested 22,000 new Canadians to come to Alberta to fill things we need filled, because we need people. We love people coming and moving here that share our values and want to build with us. We got something like 150,000. Like, we have had the most massive population growth in this entire country that we've seen in history. We have 44 million people right now. 12 years ago, we had 30 million people, or 35 million people. Our government had they didn't have a chance in, a snowball's chance in somewhere where it's hot to keep up with this. That's true. And we don't control our immigration. And again, I'm not saying that immigration is a bad thing. It is a great, wonderful thing that we can accommodate people who want to come here and build with us. But when we have population increasing at this rate, at this speed, it stresses our infrastructure to the point where we can't keep up. And now, even with the government injecting, I can't remember what the number is, I think it's $1.5 billion or something like that, into specifically education, we're still going to be a little short. So we need to start paying attention. And we need to start making sure that we're controlling these things in the best way we can. And when it comes to immigration, yes, we can request from the federal government that we get X amount of immigrants. We could have an Alberta immigration department just like Quebec does. But the issue becomes, if the rest of the country is insane and they refuse to slow things down so that we can build and accommodate while people are coming in, we get new Canadians from all over the place. They become Canadian citizens with mobility rights and they can come here. And again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't come here. But if we're throwing open the floodgates and letting people migrate here faster than we can build, what does that tell you how much we care about the people that come here and leave everything in their home country to build? You know, in my cafe, I have conversations with my vendors, who are all new Canadians, by the way, every single one of them, fantastic people, hardworking people. And I have conversations about Alberta independence with them all the time. And they are pissed. What's happened? Because they're like, we came here, we worked so hard to get here, and now we sit in a hospital for 8 hours. I got hit by a train, and I had to go home because the hospital was too busy to see me. And these people that come to Alberta, come to Canada for opportunity, they're experiencing these things too. So if you do actually care about the people that immigrate to Alberta, we should be making sure that they have the services that they need as well. Not just us, but them too. And right now, with the way things are going, we can't keep up. So that's a really, really good comment. And it highlights why Alberta must take steps to be sovereign in these matters. Whether it's sovereignty within a united Canada, as the Premier is so happy to campaign for, or it's an Alberta, a sovereign Alberta outside of Canada. Something has to change.
Hi, I'm just wondering about 30 by 30. I don't know if everybody's aware, but the federal government has a plan to carve out property from the provinces, and I'm wondering if anybody knows, number one, where the property is going to come out of Alberta, whether or not it's going to be farmland, whether it's going to be, because it's supposed to be reforestation, or if it's going to be some other piece of property. And if people aren't aware of it, they're carving out our land.
In regards to the property rights you're referring to, tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. at the Mirror Lake Community Hall, Sheane Meikle will be there speaking about property rights, and I will be streaming that on Freedom Calendar, just FYI. But anyone who has concerns or anything of those things, at the Mirror Lake Community Hall, 7:30 p.m. tomorrow.
That's in Canada, isn't it?
No, it's on a way-ish, Parkland County, actually.
Well, I know that they're not going to be grabbing land out of the cities. They're going to be looking for mine, and it's under the guise of caring for nature, which is actually a slap in the face to the rest of us who have been caring for nature that has been under our care for generations. I think that a farmer, a rancher, is probably the most effective environmentalist in the truest sense of the word. And it goes hand in hand also with these 15-minute cities. It's a control thing, in my opinion, okay? Because they want you and me to be corralled into little small areas and then told that you can get out of here X number of times. They've been working on this in Europe. I have understood that they already have cities looking like that. I may be wrong, but that's what I have heard. And so go ahead and please fact check us, because there's smarter people than us. But this whole idea of the 15-minute cities is to keep us corralled and into such and such a place so that they can control us. Why they want to control us is beyond me, but yet control is an incredibly powerful aphrodisiac. There's people who are billionaires, they don't need more money, but this whole lust for power over somebody else, and that's as old as the second people that was on the third and fourth people that was on the earth. Cain and Abel, one guy, brothers, one guy killed the other. He wanted to control. It's right from the, and this is a spiritual issue, folks. That's my opinion.
The next question is, would it be feasible to be a sovereign Alberta within Canada? If not, why not?
That's actually an easy one. Number one, it's under our current constitution and the way changes to our constitution are made, it's almost impossible to do so. First off, you have to open up the constitution to make those changes. And in order to do that, you need 7 of the 10 provinces to do that. But you have to have 50% plus 1 of the population. In order to do that, you need either Ontario or Quebec to be one of the provinces, one of the 7 provinces. So let's say that you get that done. Now you've got to pass any changes that they make in the Constitutional Convention has to pass that same 7 of 10 provinces with 50% plus 1. So they've done that. Now it moves to Parliament. It has to pass the House of Commons. Once it's done that, it has to pass the Senate. Do that. And let's say by some miracle that all happens. Then we come down to the fact that once all that's done, Quebec has a veto. And so it will never happen where the Constitution will get changed to make it fair and equitable for Albertans.
And one thing that always hits me is once that Constitution is open, what else are they going to muck around in there? That's never been talked about.
Please, if you have questions, we have a lineup just for that because people on the stream cannot hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Why are we a have-not province? Quebec has a surplus and our roads suck. Our counties say they have no money for even gravel, not just Athabasca, it's Westlock, Thorhill, I'm sure. I realized the Strathcona County, they got refineries there, all their side roads are paved. I use that as trying to convince people as why Alberta should be doing stuff like that. And the other question is, when people ask me if Alberta separates, what part of the debt are we going to take with us, or do we owe?
So for the first question, we're not a have-not province, but I'll tell you folks, 50% of our budget is bureaucracy. 50%. By some estimates, we could fire 60 or 70% of our bureaucrats and still provide the same level of service. AHS alone, I think there's something like 4 managers per doctor. Even if we brought it down to 1 manager per doctor, do you know how much money we would be saving? These are some of the, it's not that we don't have the money, it's the money is tied up in bureaucracy. The parasites, the ticks are biting us and making us allergic to meat. That's why. In addition, we hemorrhage money to Ottawa. Hemorrhage, $30 billion deficit every year. What goes out of Alberta to what comes back. $3 billion overpaid for pension. $1.5 billion overpaid to EI. Like, it is not a problem of not having things. It's a problem of parasitic loss from bureaucrats and Ottawa not treating Alberta fairly in that we run a deficit and still $30 billion goes to Ottawa for which we don't get a penny. Oh, there was a second one. What was the second question? How much? Oh, debt. Again, negotiation thing. I'll take this one, Ben. Shane, you gonna make me do it? Shane will do it.
I was just about to say exactly what you just said. If we went down on how much we have sent in surplus to Ottawa, I think in negotiations, my opinion, in negotiations, we just call it a loss on what we've lost to them, and they call a loss on the deficit to us, because we have spent way more sending to Ottawa that we didn't get back than they have. And anybody that thinks that that's our job as fellow Canadians is to send money. No, the Constitution actually says that if we send money to Ottawa, those services are supposed to come back to us. So that does not hold water. So if we've sent all that surplus to Ottawa, we shouldn't have any of that deficit, in my opinion. But that'll be up to them in negotiations.
I appreciate the questions, but the problem is that there's a lineup and the people can't hear you online. So we'll catch it after.
We still have quite a few written questions. Next question. What about an Alberta Constitution?
That's the opportunity. This is the opportunity that Alberta has its own constitution by Albertans, for Albertans, not written by another sovereign in another land and imposed on us, but one that we actually decide on. That's the opportunity. That's what we're working towards.
What about these white papers from Keith Wilson and the Alberta Transition Council? Any idea if they are composing first draft of an Alberta Constitution?
I don't think so. That's a different project, but there are groups, I should say, that are working on draft constitutions, ideas to present. But if you're interested in what our constitution could look like, I would encourage you to, number one, read the Canadian Constitution, because I guarantee you that most people in this room haven't done it. Read that one, and then start reading other constitutions from other countries around the world in which you either admire what they're doing or you don't like it. And then you get an idea of what works, what doesn't work, and what we should be looking for in a constitution for Alberta.
Hi. Thanks for letting me have this opportunity. My name's Richard Cedar, and I am quite grieved by this whole process of the idea of separation. And it's important to me to let my neighbors and my family know that I'm really against this. I travel quite a bit, and when I meet other Canadians in different places and different places in the world, they look at me, oh, you're from Alberta, and they look at me sideways, and it's kind of embarrassing. So what are you guys doing? And what I tell them, I say, well, it's like an entitled, spoiled kid whining about his inheritance. We are one of the most prosperous countries, provinces in a prosperous country. And what's not fair is that Alberta's sitting on a huge pile of oil. We have great agriculture. We have a lot of great things for tourism. That's what's not fair. And we're whining about it, and we want to separate because we're too wealthy. It's like, give your head a shake. I could go on, but I just want people to know this is what I stand for. Thank you.
I appreciate that, but I'm going to debunk what you just said right there. Number one, let's start with the oil. When you can't take that oil out of the ground because of regulations, that's no longer an option. Number two, when the tourism from the federal government is such that they are capping us and they're giving all the other residents of Canada access to the parks, but not us. Number three, let's go to agriculture. When they're restricting what we can do for fertilization and trying to take back some of our farmland and turn it away, that's not fair. So you call it, well, how did you put it? You said spoiled whining. No, it's not spoiled whining. It is, we want to be treated equal under the Constitution, which is what we are supposed to be. Anybody else want to take it before I?
Do you appreciate democracy?
I would die for it, sure.
Oh, as would I. We don't have it here.
Agree with that. We
Okay, what
we
time?
do have a vote. I've been in communist countries where they don't even have a vote and can't speak up.
Sure.
So I understand what democracy is. But what I see the Take Back Alberta and all these other groups, they try to enforce their ways on other people that don't agree with them. And I think
Okay.
that's not democracy.
I think
we
you're
need to listen to one another
I think you're
and
missing.
not use historic things that were wrong. And there's great grievances, and I don't disagree with you. But a lot of those are being fixed. And we do pump a pile of oil out of here. And so don't use all those old facts to make a point and distort them to make a point. And I think that's the part that really grieves me, is that
Okay,
people
so-
get taken in by you. I'm
Yeah, well,
I
we're
don't
gonna
wanna-
we're gonna
I
we're
don't
gonna
wanna
move on here.
badmouth anybody
Well,
here.
I'll spend some time with you after, but we
I
got
don't
to
wanna
get
badmouth
through the rest.
anybody here because we can all be taken in by stuff. But I do take offense to people who try to take people in.
Okay, well, I'm offended that our ballot boxes aren't open before an election's called. I'm offended that a government in Ottawa imposes rules on us that we can't change and we suffer the consequences. I'm offended that our prime minister, who we certainly didn't vote for in any of Western Canada, really, save for a few ridings, goes on the world stage and says that this country is a genocidal maniac and everybody should be ashamed of being Canadian. I am offended when I hear a prime minister say that Canada has no culture and we're going to be a first post-nation state. I'm offended when a prime minister goes to another country and says that he's going to usher in the new world order here. I'm offended when the sacrifices that our veterans made for freedom, for the opportunity we have to remain free, are ignored, and our sovereignty in the country is allowed to be dissolved by people that have nothing to do with us. We didn't vote for 30 and 30. We didn't vote for like half of the regulations coming in from other from other institutions like the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization that want control here. We didn't vote for those things. And I'm offended that as a Western Canadian, there is nothing I can do to fix it. Like you laugh at this, but the fact that the election's called before our ballots are counted in Alberta, let alone British Columbia, that is no laughing matter. You're right, it doesn't change the outcome. We cannot change the outcome. You just made my argument, sir. You just made my argument. If you live in a place where you cannot vote your way out of policy or legislation that adversely affect you, you do not live in a democracy and you need to do something to change it.
You talked about the historical things and that I talk about that. Okay, let's talk about the three bills that are sitting in there right now. The three bills that we did not vote for out here in the West, Bill C-8, Bill C-9, Bill C-22. All of those adversely affect every single Albertan, and we have no recourse on them. They can take us off the internet without any recourse. They can take, and I don't claim to be a Christian, but I respect the people that do. And if they quote scripture, they can go to jail for quoting scripture under Bill C-9. And that one is the worst one because that one is already passed the House and is in the first reading in the Senate. Now, only, what is it, 7 senators are still conservative senators. The rest were all appointed by Justin Trudeau, and that bill will pass in the Senate. And once that is done, you will not be able to do anything if somebody takes offense to it. I am glad you take offense to what I have to say, because that is my right as a Canadian under the current system. But if Bill C-9 comes in, I won't have that right.
I do agree with you on something, though, for sure. This isn't pleasant for me. You know, you expressed that you don't like what's happening, and this is, what was the word you used? Grieved, as am I. I am too. When I was in elementary school, I'm 46 years, I'll be 47 this year. So in the early 80s, I started school in the early 80s. I remember my grade 4 teacher, Mr. Ruda, talking about why Canada was free. We would always be free. We had this constitution. We had the Charter Rights and Freedoms. And it was recent. I mean, it was in 1982 that it was repatriated. The idea of Canada when I was young was that we had these freedoms and we could keep them and we would always be that way. And I've realized that was old Canada. I was a very, very patriotic young man. And I was right up until even my late 30s. So, you know, I grieve for that as well. It isn't, I'm sad that the Canada that I believed existed didn't. And I realized that, I felt that as I was laying on a concrete bed for the crime of holding a protest on my own property. Like these are the things that I've witnessed. I've as a Canadian citizen, I've attended illegal church services. Illegal. Because if the government knew I was going to church, I would be arrested. I've been arrested for protesting. I've watched my friends be arrested for those things. The things that we thought Canada was, that we believed it was when we were younger, they're not here anymore. And honestly, I believe, and I will hold true to this, when Alberta stands up and we assert our sovereignty, I know that the rest of Canada will wake up from this spiral that they're on. All of the trajectories in this country, yes, we have some prosperity for now. We're just entering a recession. Trajectories are down. Inflation is out of control. Kids can't buy houses. Like it's, the path we're on isn't good. And something needs to be done. So I believe that Alberta standing up will save the rest of Canada. I really do. I really believe that the majority of Canadians feel like you do. You know, they love this country and they don't want to see it go down the toilet. And I don't think there's any other way to stop it than for one province standing up and standing up against it and forcing the rest to pay attention.
These are the last 2 questions. Yeah, those are the last 2. Yeah.
So one written and then 2 more, and I think we're done. There are so many issues with Ottawa. Why is it that our Alberta politicians have not fixed these issues?
Because they can't. I'll expand on that a little bit. Under the current structure, there are many things that Alberta could do to assert their sovereignty, similar to Quebec. I don't know why we don't do those things. Tax collection is number 1. Why can Quebec afford to fight the same Supreme Court ruling 5 times? Their language law, Bill 101, I guess it is, has been struck down by the Supreme Court 4 times. Quebec's challenging it for the 5th time now. Why is it that Quebec can do that and assert their dominance and their sovereignty as in a sovereign Quebec within a united Canada? Because he who has the gold rules. They collect their own taxes. They've taken control of all of these sovereign jurisdictions that they can, and they put themselves in a position where they can insulate themselves against any federal legislation that they don't like. 1982, when the Constitution was signed by all of the rest of the premiers, Quebec passed a law like the next week that said that they would use the notwithstanding clause on every single piece of federal legislation. Like they can do these things, you know? But for some reason in Alberta, our government just won't do it. I heard Danielle Smith talk about how she says she's campaigning on a sovereign Alberta with a united Canada. And then she tells me there's no appetite to collect her own taxes. And I'm like, are you kidding me? The linchpin in the whole thing. And you're not even going to do that. We could do it. Absolutely. My friend Benoit Trudeau, in his book, it's called Enough, he outlines all of these things. Yeah, of course we have. I'm not saying we haven't. But what I'm getting at is there are ways we could assert our sovereignty, but we just don't do it. I don't know if it's because the bureaucracy behind the government is too big and it can't be done or what. But this conversation that we're having about Alberta sovereignty, this leads to those types of things. If you believe in a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, these conversations need to be had so we can start taking our sovereignty.
Okay. Hi. So how do you get people to understand that the federal government rules everybody, but above them also the royalty that has been in control of Canada was also in control of the United States beforehand, before they kicked them out and won?
I don't think the royalty is in charge of Canada anymore. We have they call them traditional figureheads, our lieutenant governor, governor general, those types of things. It's not that they're in control, but what I would say is if you attest to being a sovereign independent nation, why would you keep those things? Quebec, for instance, they actually went and they delivered a note to the king that said, we just voted in the legislature to not acknowledge the monarchy at all. Oh, and by the way, we put a for sale sign on the front lawn of the lieutenant governor's house. Like these are the things that could be done.
She still works for the crown. And why did all the natives, the chiefs, all dressed up, go to the royals? They still own us. So if we don't get out of Canada and become sovereign people, we are never going to be on our own. We will never have our rights. We will be done.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you three for coming out here and speaking to us tonight. I haven't put in 1/16 the time and effort that you guys have on doing your job here. It's great. I did sign up to campaign to collect signatures, and I had an East Indian gentleman come to me, and he says, you know what, guys, I've been in this country 18 years. Landed in Ottawa, did my time. There was things he had to do to move to the west. He did, came to Calgary, came up to Edmonton, and now he's residing in Edmonton. Now this is an immigrant, an East Indian, that said if this doesn't go through, he says, boy, God help us all. He says Ottawa is going to rain down on the west. Him and his wife and 3 children are actually planning on moving back to India because he says the Canada we moved to is no longer here. Thank you guys for your time.
So I've never been a believer that the way to fix something, if it's broken, is to tear it down to the grassroots. That maybe is not the most efficient way. This country has got a parliamentary system that is representation by population, but they also have a Senate. And the Senate, every party that I've seen, and I'm older than some of the people here, campaign on we should have an elected Senate, because that then is representation by province, which can override legislation that is bullied into the rest of Canada. And that's a way to fix it without having to tear it right down and then rebuild it probably in the same fashion with power-hungry people. I don't think what you're talking about is going to fix it. The problems are there. Don't disagree with that. I don't think anybody does. But maybe this is not the way to fix it.
I am really glad you're here, and I'm really glad you brought that up. I do not believe we're tearing anything down. There comes a time when a group of people, a society or region, they grow up and they're ready to self-determine. And I believe that's Alberta. It's the same as when we grow up and we feel like it's time to move out of our parents' house and self-determine. I don't believe it's tearing anything down. I believe what we're doing is building something for ourselves by ourselves, for starters. We can differ on that, that's okay. But for the factual stuff, Canada does not have representation by population. We don't. There are some provinces that have 1 MP for every 44,000 residents. There are some provinces that have, Ontario has 1 MP for 144,000. So it is not representation by population. And the Senate, I agree, if we had adequate and equal Senate representation, we might have a fighting chance at doing some of the things that you mentioned. The United States, they actually can do it because they have 2 senators per state. In Canada, I believe the Western provinces have 6 senators each, something like that. Ontario and Quebec, they have 30-something. One has 36, one has 38. So the Senate, they are appointed. You're right. But that's less of a problem than the amount of senators we get. Why the Senate is supposed to be the last, they're supposed to be the last barrier between bad legislation that a province can use to get out from it. But in our case, all we have is a notwithstanding clause, and that's only for 5 years. And it riles up and becomes a politically charged weapon that government opponents use to try and take down government. We shouldn't have to live like that. If we had an elected Senate, like you mentioned, and we had equal Senate representation across the provinces, that would probably work, but we don't. And there was a Triple E Senate reform campaign during the reform time. You remember that? That was the big thing. The West wants in. We need to reform the Senate. We need to make sure that we can be equal under the Constitution and a united Canada. And they wouldn't do it. They kept blocking and blocking and blocking. And the reason why they did it, you might not believe me on this, but here's why. It comes down to the quote that Sheane gave. This is why we talk about the history, because history explains where we're at. When Alberta and Saskatchewan were legislated into existence, Clifford Sifton did not say, we want to work together to build something. He said, we desire, and every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairies go to enrich our lives in the East, to build up our factories and places of work, and contribute in every conceivable way to its prosperity. They did not say we want to work together and have representation by population. They did not say we want your senators to represent your region and have equal voice in the House of in the chamber. They didn't say those things. They said we want your stuff. And all of the legislation, I shouldn't say that. Many pieces of legislation that we've experienced from 1905 until now have been specifically to do what Clifford Sifton wanted in the first place. And things have changed, as the other gentleman points out. We did have, in 1930s, the federal government gave us control of our land and resources, sovereignty over those things, because we grew up a little bit and we were ready to do it. And then, we got a few other things later on, and now I believe Alberta is to the point where we should be self-determining. We shouldn't be allowing other people to make the rules and legislation that we have to live under without being able to influence it. So I agree with you on your points. I just think that the points take me to a different conclusion, and that is the reform necessary isn't available under the current system, and therefore we must build something new by Albertans, for Albertans, and be a leader in Canada.
I became a canvasser for freedom. My parents immigrated to Canada, and my dad had to be here for a few years before my mom and my sister could come. My mom needed to learn to speak English before she could come to Canada. So with all the immigration that's going on, as we get back to that, it's not fair, because way back when, they had to do all this to come to Canada. And they came from Germany. My mom was in a bunker as a little girl. So this immigration stuff, this is, like you said, a problem with our healthcare and education and all the system that we have.
Is there anybody in the room that does not believe that living in Canada is a blessing? We all believe that, don't we? Like, we really do have good things. We have such good things here that people actually give up everything they have, where they're from, their families, their stuff, everything. And they move thousands and thousands of miles away, barely speaking the language of the place they're going, because they want what we have. We have something great. And what we have that's great here is being threatened. No matter which side of this conversation you're on, you must see that the rights and freedoms and opportunity that you had in your youth are not here anymore. Or if they are here, they're not the same. It doesn't look the same. We must at least see that. If we fail to protect what we have here, what the West is for people who want freedom and opportunity, what does that say about the care and attention we have to this blessing? If we allow it to go quietly into the night, without standing up for something, even if it means something as saying, hey, we're going to stand our own and we're not going to go with you because those values that Canada used to be that people wanted to go to, that's the values we want to preserve. And we want to be the beacon of freedom and the bastion of freedom for everybody who wants that, who wants to escape the enslavement they're in and come somewhere where they can do this. We need to protect that. I don't believe we can protect it within Confederation. That doesn't mean that I hate Canada. It doesn't mean that I want to tear anything down. It simply means that I believe we're facing an existential threat to the way of life that we knew, that we grew up with. And we need to do something about it. My conclusion is Alberta sovereignty. And you might disagree with me on that. And that's why I'm happy to talk to you about these things. If you have ideas on how we can stop this freight train that we're on from going over the cliff, I am all ears, because honestly, there is nothing that would make me happier than to be able to fix all of these things and this flag that's tattooed on my back be appropriate. And actually, it will always be appropriate because I grew up with that and I believed in it. That's why this conversation exists, and I'm happy to have it with you.
And that concludes the evening. We want to thank you folks so much, especially to you guys.
One sec.
That
Just a couple bonus comments. I found one of my pages. One comment from someone in their 80s, elected officials can walk the floor to form a majority government from a minority government, and we Albertans aren't able to change that. So there's no question here, but if you could comment on that. Somebody else wrote, what happens when we separate and we're reaping the rewards of an independent Alberta and we get a inrush of people from the east and other countries who want to join Alberta? And then lastly, one of our guests here said that this process is very necessary and honorable. Thank you for doing this. It needs to happen. The federal Liberals will only continue to tax us all to death and are bent on bringing this country to its knees. So if you could comment on that and then deliver closing remarks. Thank you.
You betcha. I'll make a quick comment on the idea of the influx coming in. I believe, my opinion, that there will probably be an influx going out as well. That would not surprise me. People who are really, totally against the idea of managing our own stuff and would rather stick with a more communist kind of look to it. That's the communism that's coming. That's what I have to say. That cost me 2 whole cents. Anything more?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, especially for those of you who disagree. That took a lot of courage and other manly parts, and we really appreciate that. We love you guys. Thank you so much for coming out, and I hope we can still shake hands and have a beer or a coffee. So thank you so much for coming out, and we appreciate that a whole bunch. Good night.
So thank you very much for tuning in. So tomorrow at 7:30. Will be the guys with land rights, with the guys from NHPPA. Sean Buckley will be on the house. I'll be streaming at 7:30 p.m. tomorrow, as well in White Courts. I will be there as well, streaming the event with Let's Talk Alberta. That will be at the White Court Street Act Society. And as well, I will be on Thursday and Friday. Thursday will be in Fairview, and Friday it will be in Sexsmith. So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you in a bit, and bye for now.
Well, folks, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I think you probably can. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching. Thanks for being with us for another Let's Talk Alberta event just outside of Westlock, Alberta. Tomorrow, we're going to be in Winfield, Alberta. I'm going to post that in case you can't hear what I'm saying. Winfield tomorrow. I spelled tomorrow wrong, but that's okay. Would love to see you there. If you have opposition points, you don't like what we're saying, you want to challenge us on these things, please come talk to us. I would love to talk to you about this very important subject. So have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow, hopefully in Winfield. And yes, here's something. She's coming. There she is. Meow.